talk about them in a little bit more detail. These next two slides are courtesy of crave.com, by the way, where you can also find the C3 Panthers podcast. Shout out to catcrave.com. But did some analyzing, and according to spotrac.com, center Bradley Bozeman's market value in 2023 will be $12 million per year, a 3-year deal, $36 million. That would put him as the fourth highest paid center amongst all centers. My question to the panel, are you buying or selling? Are you giving Bradley Bozeman this type of contract to stay the center for the Carolina Panthers? I would like to kindly go first. This is a resounding hell yes, man. For years, Tony and I have been on this show saying we have to build a Great Wall of Carolina. We have finally done it. And this is one of the cornerstones of the Great Wall of Carolina. It is absolutely important, maybe the most important free agent signing that the Carolina Panthers can make is to sign Bradley Bozeman and his wonderful wife to an extension with the Carolina Panthers so they can continue to be a great extension of this organization, both off and on the football field. Like my man JD says, pay that man.
100% agree. Give him the bag. This is the guy you need to shore up your line. This is the guy you need for your culture. 100% agree. This guy needs to be on the team. Give him the bag.
Agreed.
Wow. Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're gonna have to say that right now, until there's some other information that tells us otherwise. And what I mean by that is you have a couple of options right here. You can re-sign Bradley Bozeman. You can go and assign another free agent, right? You could bring back Eflin, right, which is the third, right? Or you could go high in the draft in the second round and get a center that you think can start from day one. I think that the former being re-signed Bradley Bozeman is going to probably get you. It might be a little bit more expensive at the position than you wish you were paying for at the moment, but it would keep you the most sound going forward, right? To where all the other ones would be a threatened regression in some form or manner. And so right now, unless I see some center free agent out there that someone can argue to me is an upgrade on the actual field, I think not only do you have to re-sign them, but you have to re-sign them at really fair market value, like, because he's just played pretty dang well. And we'll need to see what he does in the last couple of games. But each game going forward, there's a reason he's talking to the reporters right there. He's another guy that knows the importance of this season and the next couple of weeks going forward. And why do you think he wants to bounce back so much this week after last week's performance? Because each week of good tape means more and more reassurance he deserves this money.
Yeah. Go ahead, Greg.
I got a question for y'all with this. If you had to pick one and you had to sign one as a top 5 money player, would you sign Brian Burns or Bradley Bozeman as a top 5 player? Money. That's a tough question, ain't it?
Well, but it's also a little bit redundant because I think at this point you have to pay them both. Like we've already gone over with the fact that we didn't trade Brian Burns. You have to pay Brian now. You're gonna have to pay Brian. The part of the reason why I really want to re-sign Bozeman is not only because he is an incredible player, but now that we got those draft picks back from the CMC trade, and now that we have assets to use during the draft, I don't want to go after positions that are playing well for the Panthers right now. I don't want to draft another center. I want to use it on a linebacker, or I want to use it on another defensive end or a safety, or another wide receiver to pair with DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall Jr. now that we have no more Robbie Anderson. More tools to help this Panthers team take the next step. So, I don't know. I mean, I want to see both of these dudes. That's hard to pick, Greg.
Yeah, I agree. I want to see both of them too. That's what I just mean. If you're going to give top 5 money, you can only give it to one. Who would it be?
Well, I think
that's the tough question.
I think giving Bozeman top 5 money would be, a little great, like quick to grace him with that kind of money. You know what I'm saying? Like, is like one semi good year. That wasn't even the entire season. We're gonna say, all right. I mean, Brian Burns is giving us more tape and more stuff to say, yes,
Sure.
top 5. But here's the good news, and this is why Bozeman should be considering that centers are cheaper.
Agreed.
That like they're not even in the same stratosphere, really, probably, of playing like the money from a top 5 defensive end. If you could pay a top 5 center and still get another free agent that you pay well, you pay the defensive end is going to take a lot of the money. I think at this point we're probably in the place right now that the actual conversation is the same for Brian Burns as it is for Bradley Bozeman, is the Panthers need to re-sign them regardless of what you guys think, what anyone thinks about the money and the value, because without them, the team has got even more holes and more things to fill. And then you're either spinning your wheels forever or you're going backwards to try to go forward.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And by the way, before we move on to the to our segment, Code Dizzle's man, Spectral One Actual says, "Let's go C3. P.S. Code Dizzle the GOAT. With them 10 Aussie dollars."
Fair argument, yeah.
With them 10 Aussie dollars. Appreciate you, Spectral A1. Code Dizzle.
Oh, yeah.
You got a fan base, bro. Next up, similar questioning, but for a different player. This is none other than D'onta Foreman. We've been talking about him a lot this year. He's been a standout player. We've been debating him and McCaffrey. That's a whole nother debate for a different time. This right here says via spotrac.com, D'onta Foreman's annual market value in 2023 will be a 1-year, $3 million deal that would put him at number 22 among all running backs. Now, this seems kind of cheap on its surface.
Yes, it does. You can't, this poor guy.
But given we have been talking about with running backs, and you see Chuba Hubbard playing decent, you see Blackshear playing decent, and we just came off of this whole debate about paying running backs. Do we go and shell out more dollars that could be spent towards more important positions, or do you just bring back Foreman on kind of a deal?
Hold on, I got to pull up Blackshear and Hubbard's stats, because you just said they're both playing decent. I think you're thinking about one game. They're not playing decent this year, so we don't need to consider.
I'm talking about Foreman, like getting
I'm saying we don't need to judge Foreman's performance based on what they're doing. They've had one good game this year, and Blackshear's wasn't even a fantastic game. It was a third string running back game that he played well. So I'm going to look at the stats real quick, but I push back on the fact that they've played well.
If you don't sign D'onta Foreman, you have two options. You have to either go get another running back in free agency, or you have to draft one. And they got to be and you got to be comfortable that they can play a significant role, because you're not walking into next season with Chuba Hubbard and Blackshear saying we got this.
Right.
No, I think the other thing that's wild about this is, folks, this is why, and kids out there listening, this is why you need to just learn how to kick the football and be a field goal kicker. This poor guy, D'onta Foreman, gone out there and put his body on the line harder than anybody, and Bradley Bozeman's going to get paid. All these other guys are going to get paid, and they're going to come up to this guy. You're going to say, here's $1 million, and thank you for your service, or whatever. It's just I would be fine with this. I'm hoping D'onta Foreman gets more than this in the NFL. I don't know if it's here, but I would be hoping that if I was him, I'd be trying to sign like that Mike Davis deal where you're getting like
Tony,
$6 million.
But Tony, that's if you're him. Now, take this from the perspective that you're the Panthers. because I'm gonna come out a little
Then
bit.
he's gonna go be a
controversial.
Texans running back.
I mean, look, I'm gonna be a little bit controversial.
49ers.
I don't think I am gonna resign Foreman, and it's not because he's a bad player. It's just because I think that you can replace running back production. He is a very good football player. I take nothing away from him. And okay, Greg, even if it's not Chuba Hubbard and Blackshear, I think I think that Kyle Shanahan and a lot of other coaches and NFL teams have shown you that you can reproduce similar production from running backs that have been gone undrafted. So listen, if he's willing to come back on a cheap deal and we can afford something like this,
that
then
is a
fine.
cheap deal.
It is, but I would say any other position that we could spend on the defensive line or the offensive line, that's much more where I would rather spend our money.
All right. And you make a very good point there. And this deal right here, 1 year, $3 million, that's a team-friendly deal. That's a prove-it deal right there. If he's willing to sign that, you've got to take him. Because I'm looking at Chuba Hubbard stats, 59 rushes, 260 yards this year. Blackshear stats, 19 rushes, 73 yards this year. So I don't think
not a lot of touches.
If he'll take this, I don't think you can move forward.
I don't think he should take it if I was him. If I was him, I would go play for a different team for a little bit more money than that.
But
try to get a $5 million deal that's over 2 or 3 years or something.
He may be betting on himself, though. He may be betting on himself. If he takes a 1 year, $3 million deal, because come on, seriously, I know it's 1 year, $3 million. Man. Who can't live off $3 million though? Seriously,
this is his
1 year, $3 million. Then for the big bag next year.
No,
because Carolina needs to fill that hole.
This is he's only got one more stop, and you're never going to hear D'onta Foreman's name.
Bag.
Maybe, but if he takes this deal next year and he gets 1,200 yards, are we going to sign him to a 3-4 year deal for middle of the line run? No,
nope.
For 1,200 yards next year.
He ain't going to do that. That's just not going to happen. That's just
why
not
is he
how
not going to do that? He's only played half the season this year, and he already has 646 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, why would he not do that?
My question is, who would pay him more?
Oh, there's got to be a lot of teams around the league that have a little bit more wiggle room at that position group in the money that they could allocate over the next 2 years. And the Panthers do.
I'm just saying, if he did not perform that much better than everybody else on the team, I could see what you're saying and maybe go for a draft or look in the free agency. But because he's been that much better, and if you would look at his stats for the entire year and play that out for the entire year, he's a 1,200-yard, 10-touchdown running back.
He'd be great in Pittsburgh. He'd be great in Pittsburgh. He would fit in as a good complement to Najee Harris in some ways. Imagine that.
He's a starting running back.
New England could use him, I bet. There's a lot of teams out there. It would
have to be a 1 year deal. I would never sign him to more than
a prove-it deal.
I'm not saying we should sign him. I'm saying that he's going to. What did Mike Davis get? Just look at. All right, enough of this. It's enough talk about that. What's next?
He's a great running back, but I think that position's been.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair that you don't want to allocate that money. I'm just thinking he should try to get more than that.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a player, you should try and be getting as much
as you can. Yeah, especially at his age.
While
I wouldn't settle for that if I was D'onta.
And that's why I disagree with Greg. Like this year, there are no more prove-it deals. Like this year is his prove-it year for the Panthers.
Right.
I don't think it's gonna. But I don't think there's another year where he's gonna get more money than what he would demand at the end of this season.
I don't know. Let's see how he finishes.
I agree with a couple of things. So number one, I disagree that this year was his prove-it year. If anything, last year was his prove-it year. And he performed pretty well. And he still didn't get a great contract. I don't think that D'onta Foreman is going to be taking a big contract no matter where he goes. He's been able to come here and do things that were great. But again, he might be a great rusher, but he isn't an all-around great running back from what we've seen so far. And he's getting older. And so I tend to side with Cody on this front. I think that D'onta Foreman, I think you got to you have to move on from him, especially since you have still got a couple of years with Chuba Hubbard. That's not me signing that Chuba Hubbard's the guy moving forward, but that's just me stating that Chuba Hubbard offers a lot more as far as flexibility moving forward and, in my opinion, potential upside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And then, so just real quick to the injury report. This is something that's concerning that I wanted to mention. Most people were limited in practice, but Taylor Moton did not practice, and he seems to be day to day. And I think this is going to drastically change the outcome of this game. And even when we think about this game, if Taylor Moton isn't able to be out there, because even though I've been hard on him, I mean, look at this Detroit Lions defensive line and what they've been able to do recently. I mean, they have some damn good players on that defensive front, including rookie Aiden Hutchinson, who is probably in running to be the defensive rookie of the year this year. Him and Sauce Gardner, corner for the Jets. So, Taylor Moton was limited. Keep in mind that if Taylor Moton doesn't go, you're talking about Camping being on the line, having to go against Hutch and a few of their guys. That's a bit concerning to me. J.C. Horn said he had some shoulder stiffness, not too much that he's worried about. And then C.J. Henderson was full practice. Any thoughts on this injury report?
Yeah, when it comes to Taylor Moton, maybe this will be for some of you, from some of the people on Twitter, and maybe even Cody Lashney, a blessing in disguise. You throw your boy Christensen to right tackle like everybody's been asking for. You put Cade Mays in there, and the offensive line doesn't regress as much.
Yeah,
as
you put Michael Jordan at left guard.
There you go. That's what we all love.
Hey, you remember the 4-man rush or something?
But still, like, there's a shakeup that some people believe, and you would actually get to do a little experimental testing with it against like a line that you said is or a defense that's kind of finding their way a little bit in Detroit. James Houston, the fourth, is a rookie linebacker for the Detroit Lions, is the first rookie that could potentially have 5 sacks in his first 5 games. And he's on a 4-game sack streak right now. So the offensive line needs to bounce back after a bad performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've got a formidable defense that they're going to have to do it against. And now you're doing the one thing that this line has not had to do all season, and that is face a potential shakeup of positions. One of the things the Carolina Panthers offensive line has been consistent across the board, except for one single change where Bradley Bozeman stepped in for an injured Pat Elflin, and it hasn't looked back at that starting position. But this offensive line has had some continuity, and that usually is a good recipe for success for offensive lines. So now we're trying to figure out if mix-up could be a positive for this team, and a line trying to find its way, and that is scary in one hand, and that's why a lot of coaches don't like to do that kind of crap.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, I think Christensen has tackle capability. So like we said before, I wouldn't mind seeing Cade Mays at left guard and Brady Christensen out at right tackle. I think that kind of physical skill set from a big man is very hard to find. And if you have that in Cade Mays, in Brady Christensen, and you're not using it, in my mind, you're kind of wasting it. So I would like to see that potentially happen. And then shout out to your bastard son, White Chocolate Espresso. It was him that had the idea a while back. Maybe at some point, see what you can get in a trade for Taylor Moton and move Christensen to right tackle and maybe upgrade Cade Mays. I don't know. That was just an idea, but to me, it seemed okay.
I'm concerned that the Taylor Moton film this season is going to drastically reduce his value in the eyes of potential suitors. I would like that to be the case, and I'm hoping that this is just a scenario that Taylor Moton looks way worse just because the pieces around him are so much better. But it's just hard to ignore what we've seen all year, and what feels like a step backwards in his progression as a football player, as a right tackle in general. This week was rough for the entire offensive line. Brady Christensen was getting blown up. Ickey was getting blown up. It was a failure across the board on that offensive line and many of those sacks. But I still think if you have a weak link, it's got to be Taylor Moton. But that just says it's a rest day, so I don't think that's something that we have to worry about.
Yeah, I actually was just thinking about that. I was like, I just looked at what the actual injury was, and there's no injury. He just is getting it looks like a vet rest day.
But what does that tell you almost? Like, hey, we need to take a break a little bit, you know?
CMC was getting it all the time.
Yeah.
Jack Thompson gets it all the time. It's status quo for veteran
I agree.
players.
Is that I want to see Taylor Moton do well is what I want to see. Is I don't think his last 2 years haven't been fantastic.
Well, and CK raised a good point there is we don't know if maybe the better offensive line around him has made him look bad, but on that mindset, can we go back and look and say that maybe a bad offensive line around him
made him look better,
made him look really good?
They
attacked our weak points, and he looked really good because he never had to stop.
That's been our defense for him all the time too. Is that he's been the best player on a bad line,
right? That's one of the things. That's almost some of the arguments that we had when he was looking bad. Even is it's really hard to look good as an offensive lineman when nobody else is good around you either, because it's almost like a weak link, right? You start having people missing assignments. All of a sudden, now you're getting bull rushed by two people trying to pick up somebody else's assignment. Like, I think that there is a real truth to that. So I think Taylor Moton got away with a lot of bad play earlier than we realized because he was on a bad team or a bad offensive line. But it's hard to say. It's hard to say because he got paid well and he had great technique. And I think that's the part that is tough to I guess not focus on is he did play well at one point. It just seems to have gone off of a cliff for some reason.
Yeah. One thing that excites me about this season, we were talking about how is it that this late in the season we continue to find this like renewed excitement or some reason to care, whether it be us chasing this division. One of the things that I've like watching is that we're kind of in a moment where the games still matter, but we still are kind of looking at player development along the way for the future.
Right.
And so when it comes to like seeing Cade Mays out there playing a game, even if it's like in the less than ideal situation, whether it be us putting a Keith Taylor in to get chewed up, we actually getting to see some of these, the coach, I would hope Fitter's getting to see some of the things that he's going to be building and working with towards the future. So I wouldn't mind seeing some of these young players because I'm trying to reserve my expectations about actually winning the division after last week. It's just like, well, we're going to have to beat the Lions now.
Right.
You don't beat the Lions, you ain't winning the division. That's just it. That's just it. So one game at a time. And speaking of those Lions, they've been a tough